All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome again today to this follow-up session. This is Reconciling Metadata with OpenRefine. And this is a joint presentation by the DPLA Outreach and Assessment Working Group and the Metadata Working Group. My name is Teresa Hebron. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Outreach and Assessment Working Group, along with Challen Wright from University of Nevada, Reno, who is also a host here today. And our presentation today is going to be done by Helen Baer, who is currently the Digital Projects Librarian at Colorado State University. And prior to going to CSU, she was the Associate Curator of Performing Arts and the Digital Projects Librarian at the Harry Ransom Center at UT Austin and a metadata coordinator at UC Boulder. She has created metadata for a variety of cultural heritage materials, ranging from costumes to personal effects to print publications. Using standards and vocabularies from across the library, archive, and museum domain spaces. So Helen loves, she tells us, cats, hiking, gardening, and her family, though not necessarily in that order. And with that, I'll turn things over to Helen. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa, for the introduction. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Today, we're going to be reconciling some metadata with OpenRefine. And give me a sec here to get my words. Okay, so let's get going. So today we were going to talk briefly about what reconciliation is. We will then do some actual reconciliation in OpenRefine. And we're going to take this really slow because, frankly, it's really complicated. I'm not going to lie to you. We will also, toward the end of our time together, briefly talk about removing duplicate values, as that is something that can sometimes come up and be frustrating and irritating. And I have just a few brief closing remarks at the end. As with the first webinar back in February, we are not doing a few things. We are not doing crosswalking, though certainly that skill is sort of the underpinning of a lot of the work that we do with metadata. This is not a hands-on work session. That's a totally different kind of webinar, so we're not going to be able to do that today. And we're also not going to be working with large data sets, because when you start doing reconciliation, which involves my computer talking to another computer far away, things can slow down quite a bit. So we're going to be looking at just some very small data sets today to get us through the content. So with that, let's get started. So I wanted to really briefly mention some of the things that we went over in the first webinar back in February. So we learned how to open or create a project. We spent a lot of time looking at facets and filtering, which are really, really powerful tools that you can use to take a look at your data and kind of see what the situation is. We did a little bit of finding and replacing just of simple strings, and we learned a little bit of Google Refine expression language, and that value.replace expression is a GREL expression. We also did a bit of splitting and joining of values in columns. We took a look at the undo and redo functions. So those are very useful, first of all, because we're all humans and we make mistakes. Oops. So we sometimes have to go back and correct our errors that we made along the way. And then I believe we also looked at exporting files. It's very simple, but we'll do a lot of these things today. In fact, I think we're going to do most of these things again. So again, I'm going to take it pretty slow because reconciliation is complicated. So we're going to take a few minutes to talk about what exactly this work is. If you look at the OpenRefine user manual, they defined reconciliation as the process of matching your data set with that of an external source. So why would we want to do this? Well, for one thing, it's a method of error correction. So if you have errors in your metadata and you think that the values might be in an outside vocabulary, it's a really nice thing to be able to check your data against that outside content and see if there's errors. And then if you're working with systems that allow this, you can then return the corrected and clean data to production for your users. Another interesting thing you can do with errors is, I know it's like heretical to say this, but control vocabularies change over time. So you might want to go back and see if your values, which in 2005 were were from a certain vocabulary are the same values. And I have an example here. Way back early in my career, I worked with costumes and personal effects. And I am absolutely certain that when I started in this area, the term in the Art and Architecture Thesaurus was costumes, and now it has been qualified with this character dress piece at the end. So that's because the Getty, which runs the AAT, continues to develop that wonderful vocabulary. And they go through and refine things, and they add qualifications all the time. So I appreciate their work, but it does mean that my old terms are out of date after a certain point if they happen to hit those records again. Another reason why you might want to think about reconciliation is if you're doing work with Wikidata and Wikipedia and Wikimedia. Some of that functionality is actually built into OpenRefine. We're not going to actually do that today, but I just wanted to let you know that that's certainly a reason that people go this route. And then I mentioned earlier, you might want to benchmark your data and just kind of see where you're at. So you're not necessarily looking to update your metadata. You might just want to see like, well, how compliant have we been in this collection with Library of Congress subject headings? That's something that you could do. And so in that case, you wouldn't necessarily be intending to return clean data to your production environment right away. But you might just want to get kind of a look at how things are going. All right, so some data can and should be reconciled, and other stuff is kind of pointless. So like free text fields, like obviously you don't want to reconcile things like that. That's a big thumbs down because nothing will ever reconcile that, right? But subjects and creators are certainly fair game. I didn't put on here geographical metadata, but certainly there's a lot of GIS stuff in various vocabularies from various communities, and that's all out there. And you could certainly be looking at checking your data against some of those sources. I will also give a thumbs down to like really, really small vocabularies because reconciliation is complicated and it takes a little practice to understand how to do it. So if you're looking at, for instance, the Dublin Core Metadata Initiative type facet, I think there were about 12 terms in it. So compare that to the Library of Congress, where you've got hundreds of thousands of terms in various vocabularies. If you're looking at 12 terms, really you should just use a facet in OpenRefine, which we'll look at today, to make it simple on yourself. All right, so there are a few different ways to approach any reconciliation project. So no matter what your goal is, there are different ways to skin a cat. The first one which I do not recommend, is to search every single value manually. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. I can tell you that. You don't want to do that because that takes forever. If you're working at scale with tens or even hundreds of thousands of records, that's not going to work for you, obviously. Another approach is what we're going to do today. We're going to use a recon service via OpenRefine in this case, if it exists. We can also use some of the different functions in OpenRefine, so not necessarily the reconciliation functions, but other ones, particularly the fetch and parse HTML functions, to tap into an API of that outside vocabulary. And we actually did this on our last webinar in February. We looked at LCSH subjects and we pulled in URIs using that fetch and parse function. So that's sort of another way to approach it. There's another approach recommended by Aaron Matson, who works in Chicago. And because, sorry to say this, there's no Library of Congress reconciliation service for OpenRefine, she has been experimenting with using Wikidata to sort of like come at it from a different angle, because Wikidata is built into OpenRefine's recon workflow, but LC doesn't have that service. So that's another very creative approach. And I would actually love to see her present a webinar about how that works. And then finally, if you are working with a certain type of vocabulary, perhaps a local vocabulary, you can actually load it into OpenRefine and do your comparison and matching that way. So now we're going to move into how we do this in OpenRefine. And this is a really quick overview of how we do this. You can have an external source or a local internal source. So if you have an external source, they, like the Getty now, they have to offer a web service that will work with the OpenRefine API. And I'm surprised by how many different vocabularies now offer this. It's really wonderful to see. Again, you have that local vocabulary option, and we'll talk about how to do that a couple of different ways. Reconciliation in OpenRefine is string searching. And so this is like really basic stuff. So it's looking at a string of characters and saying, is it same here and here? It has to be an exact match, so you can't have any differences at all. This is a process that is only semi-automated. So while it works really good at scale, you still have to be a human being and intervene and actually review and approve the results. And we'll go through all of this. It's also an iterative process. It's really not a one and done. There are a lot of different ways to approach a large reconciliation project, and we'll look at some of those today with faceting and filtering. So again, keep in mind that this is not like something you just like hit a button and go on. It does require a bit more work. Briefly, I want to mention that if you want to know which vocabularies are available to use with OpenRefine, we will take a look at the page that tells you that. There's a wonderful documentation page that we'll also take a look at. And then for reference, we are on OpenRefine 3.6.2 today. Now we are going to go over to, hold on. So this is the reconciliation test bench. And this is a list of all the amazing people around the world who have made reconciliation services. And this used to be a lot shorter. So I am like super happy every time I see growth here. You can kind of go through these. I actually don't use most of these. I haven't even heard, like, I don't know what the GTAA is, but these are all developed by different communities of practice, working in different domains. And so if you scroll down a little bit, you can see that the Getty vocabulary program has got a couple of listings here. The rhythm folks, the music folks also have a site, which is wonderful to see. Snack is here, Homosaurus is here as well. I think that's also a relatively new addition. So this is where you go to find out, has somebody built a service that I can use? This is the page. And then, let's see, I think there might have been something I was going to go back to really quickly. Oh, yes. So I seem to have lost one of my pages. I'm going to go and find it right now. Yes, and so the big documentation page about how to use the OpenRefine reconciliation functionality is here. I left it as a link later on in our slides, which we will be sharing today also, along with the recording. So this is a really fundamental page. There's been a lot of new work on OpenRefine documentation in the last 2 or 3 years, and this is just a fantastic resource. So absolutely get to know this page. You will to start trying to reconcile. So to go back to our slides, we're going to take a moment and talk a little bit about what I'm terming metadata etiquette. So reconciliation, and in fact, all metadata work to a certain extent, is a little complicated, or it really can be. It's easy to go down a rabbit hole. So I'm going to encourage you all to start to think about this the way that we think about offering out materials in an archival reading room. And this is an example of one of our wonderful students here at the CSU Libraries, demonstrating how you properly sit in a reading room and go about your work using original materials that the librarians bring out to you. So Cameron is sitting there. He's got a lot of space on his table. He has one box because our repository allows you to have a box at your table. Many don't. And he's got just one item at a time that he's looking at and thinking about. And he's also got his laptop. So I want to encourage you to sort of think about this in terms of like, how can I clear space to sort of make a clear plan and understand what I'm doing? And the other thing about etiquette too is that it's not so much about politeness here, though there is certainly a lot of politeness in an archives reading room. But it's also about sort of like having good form and approaching this in a dignified manner. And today we're going to take all of this very slowly. And do keep in mind also that perfection is not required. So When you're thinking about working with metadata, you want to figure out what your goal is. And this is pretty fundamental, because if you don't know what you want, then it's hard to develop a plan. And when you're working with metadata, it's a really good idea to stop and sort of like document your decisions and steps. Believe me, you are going to be rewarded if you work through this systematically and think about what you're doing. Otherwise, you end up with this lump of metal on the right. This is like a tangled, yucky, rusty mess. That is where you end up if you don't take things slow sometimes. So I've been there, and I'm just warning you to just go ahead and think things through in advance. Hold on just a moment. I am losing my place. Okay. So, did I skip a slide? No, I did not. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce the data set that we'll be looking at first today. And this is it's a series of videos of visiting artists who came to CSU in the late 70s and 80s and gave panel discussions, lectures, met with students, that kind of thing. They were brought to campus by John and Kimiko Powers, who were big art fans and philanthropists. Hard to say that word today. And these were really big names. So the Powerses were very well connected. So they were able to bring people like Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein to our campus here. These videos are part of a university historic film collection. And as I said, this is going to be a small data set. So we're going to look at 15 records today that are in qualified Dublin Core. Our goal is to reconcile the artist field with an external vocabulary. In this case, the Union List of Artist Names, which is a Getty vocabulary. And the method is going to be to go ahead and use that Getty service that we have seen exists. So if we want to like take this nice and slow, we're going to look for non-ULAND values, and we're going to say, nope, we don't want those. We want the good ones that the Getty has provided. We're also going to take a look at another field here, that Dublin Core type field. We're going to, in order to do this work, we have to split multi-valued cells, and we'll look at that specifically in a moment. And then we're going to perform the reconciliation. And then in terms of documentation, since this is a small and fairly simple project, we're just going to remember that we always have the OpenRefine to do and undo. So we can definitely come back to that. So now we're going to go ahead and go to our data set. And here are 15 records. And just to take a quick look, can folks see this okay now? Is that large enough? Because this really stinks when you can't see it. Okay, I'm not getting any comments that are telling me to make it bigger, so that's good. So briefly, we've got 15 records. I'm displaying a total of 25 of them right now. And the first thing that we want to look at is this artist, right? So we're going to simply open up a facet on artist and see what it says. We have 9 total choices. You can sort them by count. You might remember this from the first one. And that's really useful. It lets you see which ones are better represented than others. If you click on the 9 choices, this is really lovely. You can actually just export this by, copying and pasting this. That's actually very nice to use. You'll notice that one of our records has no value in artist. And if you take a look at this is actually that philanthropist, John Powers, talking about Japanese art, which was one of his special loves. You'll note that when I click on just this one record, it now says 1 matching records of 15 total. So just to kind of orient you again, if you're not super experienced with OpenRefine, if you want to see them all again, you might say, hey, I want to see all of them again. What happened to the other ones? You can do a reset all here, and that will make them all come back. And now, again, it's telling you 15 records are here. So we are going to do some work now on this artist field. So sorry about that. We are going to, first, we are going to split our multi-valued cells. And that is a simple process of clicking on the little caret here, edit cells, and then split multi-valued cells. You just click this. It's going to ask you, well, what's your separator? And I've already got it in here. It's a semicolon and a space. And it gives you some other options that honestly I never use because most of our data is at least really cleanly separated. So you click OK, and you have done your separation. Now, if you click on rows instead of records, you're going to see 16 rows, and that's because one of those records had 2 values. And I happen to know that it is the very last record that shows in this data set. And that's because for this particular item, which was a panel discussion with the artist Christo, his wife, Jean-Claude, was also listed as an artist, and she also participated in that discussion. All right, so if you want to start reconciling this column, you go up again to the little caret next to the column, and you go down to this reconcile option. And then you say, start reconciling. And it's going to ask you to pick a service or extension. I have already installed the Getty Vocabularies reconciliation service, but it is very simple to do. So you want to specify that I'm using not Wikidata, which is the one that's built in, but the Getty, and it's going to say I'm working. And now you get this screen. And this is where we have to talk about what these options are. It's a little confusing. So first of all, this is OpenRefine. OpenRefine has one screen that comes up, no matter what service you're using. So this is what you'll see if you pick this service, if you pick Homosaurus, if you pick that Rhythm music service, you're going to see the same thing. However, every service that is built has its own particular way of doing it, their own particular options. And so while you will see here that the Getty has provided options between searching ULAN, searching the thesaurus for graphic names, geographic names, I think, or the Art Architecture Thesaurus, not every vocabulary is obviously going to have those options because this is very specific to the Getty. And there's also something very interesting with the Getty. There's a checkbox down here, which I believe is just always checked by default, no matter what you're doing in OpenRefine. And this doesn't work with the Getty. The Getty says you are not allowed to auto match. You might wonder why. Well, I'm guessing it's because the Getty is well aware that they have a lot of homographs in their vocabulary. So that means same word, different meaning. So that means maybe there's like 3 different John Smiths, and they really do not want you getting the wrong data. Okay. So while you might see this right here, and you can leave this checked, the Getty is not going to auto match for you. And we will take a look at this here in a moment. Let's see. There's also this option, which I haven't really used very much, to be honest, to use relevant details from other columns. You might be wondering, well, what could that be? Well, if we go back to our metadata, you can see that next to the artist column, I've put in a birth date column. And while there's not a ton of data in it, I think we have some, yes, up here at the top. This is Roy Lichtenstein's birthday. So if you want to go and reconcile, and we're just going to follow those steps again here. If you want to go ahead and include that, that means that OpenRefine will consider that data when it's doing its auto matching or when it's doing the scoring to see whether or not the values are the same. I think you would have to be a developer to understand exactly how much weight is given to these other fields. But at any rate, if you can see there, it says very small, start typing to get suggestions. You can actually say, well, hey, I want you to consider my birth date column when you're looking for these matches. And I'm going to select birth date, which is what the Getty calls the same element on their side. So it's set up pretty cleanly, actually, to do something fairly complicated. So this is the basic setup for how you want to reconcile. You're telling OpenRefine, this is what I want you to do. Again, we've left on auto match, but we know it's not going to work just because that's the way the Getty has created its service. So then we click Start Reconciling. And this is where it gets really interesting. So again, this is a small data set, and so that didn't take very long. I've done this on thousands of records, and it takes like 15 or 20 minutes sometimes to do each column. So And thousands is like, I'm talking about 2,000 or 3,000. So if you're looking at 30,000 records, you might have to seriously think about how you're going to get this work done, because there are some performance issues for sure. But anyway, let's take a look at these results and understand them. So what you get here are suggested matches in this column here. And so you have someone's name, Roy Lichtenstein, followed by a score. And you're like, well, how come that score isn't like 100 or 99 or something like that? I don't know exactly why, but the Getty itself recommends that anything that scores over a 40 is probably a really good match. So that's a rule of thumb. It only applies to the Getty vocabularies because that's how they've designed their system. But that basically is what that means. You can see here that for Liechtenstein, we've got all kinds of really strange things. I don't know why this person turned up in here. I really have no idea at all. But you can see they're arranged from high score to low score. What these little boxes here mean is if you click the single checkbox, you will replace your data with the data from the vocabulary just in this cell. If you click the one that says 2 checkboxes, it will replace the data for you in all the cells that match. So we are going to go ahead and say, as part of our human review, because that's what this part is right here, that we believe that Roy Lichtenstein, as the person that we see whose little bio pops up right here, he's the right one. So we're going to say match all those cells for us. And you can see that took care of exactly 2 rows. So we've got a little bit, or maybe there's actually more. Actually, there's 3. We will get over to these facets here in a moment. So basically, when you do a reconciliation, you have to see what the computer presents to you and then make a judgment. And because this is a really small data set, we can do that by hand. If we want, we can say, oh yeah, all of these Andy Warhols, that's definitely him. Like everyone knows who Andy Warhol is. I saw these videos and it's him. I know for sure. I can click that double checkbox. And then just like that, I have made all of those match. And we can go through, again, Rauschenberg here, he has a really high score. He's got a 40. He's right over that threshold. And so I'm going to go ahead and say you can match all of these. Now, when you're doing this by hand, you have to keep scrolling down, which is really annoying. And we'll get to these facets over here in a minute, which will help you. So this next one is Sam Francis. And I'm pretty sure it's him. He's only got a 36, but I'm feeling good about it. Bing. And the match has been made. And you can work through your data like this. Rosenquist has a 45. He's obviously good to go, according to the Getty's definitions. Frank Gallo, again, another American, mid to late 20th century modern artist. So there's a theme emerging for sure. Now this one's interesting. So for this one here, I spelled his name wrong, but it figured it out anyway. Now that's pretty cool. So if I click on this, it's going to replace the incorrect first name with the correct one. And we'll go ahead and do that. And if you think it's going fast, don't worry. We are going to go back and look at some of this again. Now here's one. I misspelled Andy in Andy Warhol. And when it gave me a match, it didn't give me a super high one, right? This is like 18. So this is way below what we were expecting before. And so what we have here is definitely the correct Andy Warhol, right? But for some reason, the Getty service did not give it a high score. I feel confident that all of these with a double D are actually him. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And then we only have a couple left. And again, if you're working with a small data set, you can just look at every one of them and say, yep. You can take advantage of this little pop-up to make sure that we're talking about the correct person and then do that. So that is all very well and good. What we're going to do now is we're going to go back. And this is our undo redo, which is one of those essential features of OpenRefine that really makes this program so wonderful. We are going to go back to before the first match was made, and we're going to basically erase everything. So now we're back to where it just gave us these options, right? So at this point, I want to go over to the facets and filtering area so that you can see what this looks like. So over here you have, for every single column that you reconcile, you're going to get 2 facets that come up immediately, okay? It's just part of the process. The first one is judgment, and this means, has a match been selected? So right now you're seeing 15 records with none, and then there's a blank there, which is probably, it means there's no value. And so if I was to go and click on this double checkbox for Roy Lichtenstein, because we know this is the correct one, it will do that for me. And now it's going to tell me you've got 3 of them done and 12 are not done. The reason this is really cool is because if you want to just start filtering your way through your data iteratively, thinking about what you're doing, you can then filter and look at only the 12 rows that don't yet have a match. So that is super helpful. Again, to get out of this, if you want to reset this and see all 15 again, you can just click reset here on this facet. So that's a pretty super thing. Now, the other facet that you get is the best candidate score. So that's the highest score on the list of all these potential matches that we're given here. And we know that the Getty definitely thinks that 40 is a good threshold, right? That if our score is 40, then we can assume that it's probably pretty darn good. So what we're going to do is we're going to facet by the score. And we're going to say for everything that's scoring between 40 and 46, because that 46 was the top number, we are now looking at 10 rows, and we can do several things now. We can go through manually again and do this clicking, but there's also kind of a better way to do this. You can go up and click the little caret on the artist column, click reconcile, and then there are actions. You can say, now for just these 10 rows, I want you to go ahead and match all of these cells to those best candidates. And we'll do that right now. And then you've suddenly just moved a lot farther without having to do a lot of really tedious and manual work. Now, just because we're going to reset this real quickly. Just because you've been doing matches for some things and not others, it doesn't mean you can't go back and do a couple things. You can choose a new match. If you're like, you know what, there's something wrong with my data. This is not the right Robert Rauschenberg. You can actually go in and you can make it let you choose a new match. And I think you would have to undo that to get the match back. Yeah, so it told me that I had discarded my recon judgment. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it's still there. Yes, and there it's back again. So hold on a moment. Well, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. So you can choose a new match, and then if you want to go and do some manually, you can also go back and do that. So Sam Francis didn't make the cut. He only got, according to our facet, a score of 36. So you have several options here. You can go through and do this clickety-click by hand, which might be too tedious for you. You can revisit the facet that we have on the numeric facet and make it different. If you click a reset here, you'll get to everything. And let's say you're like, well, gosh, 46 is just too strict. I'm not like a fully staffed cataloging department. Like maybe I need to just like tone it down a little bit and take a look and see at some other scores and see if they're okay. So we're still getting all of the records that have something between 33 and 46 on the score. But what we're really looking for now are the ones that don't yet have a judgment. So if we click on that none, now we'll see, oh yeah, so because I changed the facet, the numeric facet on the scoring, now I see Sam Francis. And maybe I think, well, you know, these are pretty good. Like, I think I should probably just take these. Again, you can go ahead and tell OpenRefine to just go ahead and at this point, just do the match for me. Now you're like, what happened? Well, what happened was you need to reset your facets here. So we'll do this one. And now, hold on a minute. Where did I go here? So you can keep iterating. You can kind of go through and like, this is what I do for sure. Pick off the easy ones and then come back to the harder ones. For sure. And you don't have to reconcile everything. If for some reason that's not part of your work plan, then you don't have to. So probably right now, if you're like me, your head is smoking and there's smoke coming out of your ears. So we're going to pause for questions here. and see if anybody has any questions. I'm also going to throw out the option of just like returning to and doing some of these things again, because I think that just looking at them really helps a lot. So Michael, what do we have?
All right, yeah, folks, feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A module, and we'll get to them in order. We do have one in here. We did have one point of order question, which is that we'll be sharing the slides as well
Yep.
as the right? Yep. Okay.
Great.
So the one that we do have in the queue is it says, is there a way for OpenRefine to highlight which ones have been changed when you've exported?
That is a wonderful question. I think what you would have to do maybe is, I do not know the answer. I think there is a way to do it, and I'm going to tell you why, and then I'll have to figure this out later. But basically, at a certain point in the process, OpenRefine is storing both your original value and the new value. And so if you can figure out at what point that is, then you can export and you might be able to see that difference. I don't know exactly how, but that is an excellent question. Is that the only one, Michael?
I'm giving it another couple seconds, but yes, otherwise I believe that is the only one that we have for now.
Very good. All right. Now we're going to move on and do something else. We're going to go ahead and finish up this reconciliation here. Let's see.
Helen, before we move along, we did get one more in.
Yes.
That does have to do with you redoing something. It says, can you show again, but use LCSH?
So I didn't actually set that up today. You would have to go back to the first webinar to see, and there's a big old yucky GREL expression in there, which would show you how to reach out to the LC site and ask its API, hey, do you have this value? And then we asked it also to give us the URI for the heading. So refer back to the first one.
All right. Thank you, Helen.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to go ahead and clean this up real quick. We're going to just match everything. We're going to do a reset. So we have all 16 of our rows or 15 records. And we are very quickly going to do another really cool thing, which is get entity identifiers. In other words, you want to get URIs. So if we go to our now beautifully reconcile metadata and go down to the reconcile thingy dingy here, we can add entity identifiers. And so what we're going to do is click on that. We're going to call our column artist URI, and we could say, could actually make that ULAN URI to be a little more specific. And then lo and behold, what you've got here is not a URI, but it's really close. So this is a piece of the URI. Now, if we could look at one of the AAT records, and we'll look at Roy Lichtenstein since he's right on top here. This is his record in the ULAN. And you can see here's his heading, and it's got additional information. This page link here is what you want, right? This is a URI. What you were given is just the part up to here. So what we're going to do is very simply put this together. And we're going to make this column into a proper URL. And so we have to put any text that we want in quotes. And then I think this is correct. Yeah, and the nice thing about this is it always gives you a preview, thank goodness, right? So now this has become a URI and you can click on it. Oops, see, I did it wrong. I forgot the ULAN part. So we can quickly do an undo redo and edit cells, transform, and we want very clean plus value. Oh, you know what? I did it on the wrong thing. Anyway, this will work if you don't make the mistakes that I keep making, which is the joy of doing something live. But anyway, you kind of get the idea. You simply need to take this piece and then add the rest of it to it. So we will now take a look at reviewing the type field. You can very quickly blow away all your facets and filters if you need to, and this is something I did not learn for years. So if you simply click remove all, boom, now everything is clean and pretty again. We've done our reconciliation. Now we're going to take a look at the type field. And this is a DCMI type. And again, this is a very small vocabulary. So what you can simply do, you don't even have to necessarily split out a multi-valued cell like this one. You can take a look and say, oh, you know what? I have an error here. And simply correct it, hit enter or click the apply button, and then you're done. So don't forget, there's often like a really simple way to do something. So don't get too tangled up in case you really think that, it has to be complicated. It really doesn't. So, all right. So now we're going to go ahead and look at another data set really quickly, and we're going to reconcile with a local vocabulary. So I am going to bring up our slides real quick, and this will be the Howard Coopersmith collection. Mr. Coopersmith, who is still alive, is a geologist and an expert in diamonds, and he is well known for working in Colorado and finding a bunch of diamonds at Kelsey Lake. He donated some materials to us in several sessions almost 10 years ago now. We are going to look at just 3 records related to his collection, again, keeping the data set small. And what we want to do today is reconcile the medium field with a local vocabulary. So we're not going out to an API. This is just something that we've developed in-house here at CSU. And we're also going to look at DC format. The method is going to be the cell.cross function. It took me a long time to understand what this meant. Basically, it means cross-reference. Okay, so there's another way to do this, but we're going to start with the slightly harder way because I think it's good to sort of learn how this works. So to revisit our thinking about how we do this, we, for this project, are going to be looking for values that are not in the vocabulary. And that's because here in my department, we have been hewing to this vocabulary that was developed by my coworker, Mara, who works with research data. And so basically, for a project like this for me, if I were to find values that she had not approved, as it were, that would trigger a conversation for me with her about how to handle it. So we're not looking to actually remediate anything at this point. We simply want to see if our data matches up. And we're going to have to do that splitting of multi-valued cells once again. And then we're going to do a reconciliation. And as before, we're not going to worry too much about documentation since it is a pretty simple thing here. So back to OpenRefine, we are going to take a look at the Howard Coopersmith metadata. And here's Howard. We have things that have to do with diamonds here in this data set. And what we're going to do now, we're going to learn how to open an existing project, which we haven't done together here. So if you click on that open thing, you have a couple options, and I give you several options, but the ones that I use the most are choosing a brand new file or opening an existing project. So that's what this means. And the vocabulary is called DC format CSV. And so basically, we've opened up a pre-existing project, and here it is. There are 87 rows, so there's only 87 values, and you can see right away what this is. These are formats that are associated with research data, and you've got CSV, XML, JPEG, a lot of very, very ordinary things that you would expect to see, and then you've got some stuff that's not ordinary at all. You've got various flavors of source code. You've got BMP images, not nearly as common as the other stuff that we see, jar files, 7-zip files, something called Plink. I have no idea what that is, but research data curators like my coworker absolutely have to know this. So in order to check our Coopersmith data against that vocabulary, we're going to go over to the correct column, and it's the medium column. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to split these multi-valued cells, and that's one of those common transformations on a column. So you can say, hold on a minute. There we go, it's on cells. Split multi-valued cells. It already knows the separator. I'm going to click OK, and there we go. So to do this cell cross, we are going to add a column based on this column, and we're going to input an expression that will result in a certain output. Now we have total control over this output, and this is just the way I chose how to do it, but you can do it basically any way you want. So we're going to go to edit cells. We're going to add a column, edit column. add a column based on this column. So we're basically making a helper column here. But again, this is not like a production work type of example. We're not going to be sending this back up to DSpace, for instance. So it's okay. So we need to name our column. That's the first thing it wants us to do. And I'm going to call it DC format match. And then I will show you what this expression is that I've concocted. So it's saying that we're using the cell cross function to cross-reference. We're going to look at this other project, that's its name. We're going to look at, in that project, this particular column. And then we're going to say, in our current project, we want to look at this column here, and then we hit OK. So this gets you some very interesting results here. So we're going to go ahead and move over to our, our faceting to see what's going on. So all I asked to do was basically, if you have that value in your other control vocabulary, just show it to me. And so when you're looking here at the match, if there's blank, then there's no match. So these are the ones where I have to like stop and consider as a human being. So the really lame thing about doing it this way is that you do not have any of the awesome OpenRefine features like the faceting on the best score, or sorry, what was the other one we had? Oh gosh, I'm forgetting already, but basically this is a really crude way of doing this. So if you want to do it in a more organized fashion, there's actually an extension to OpenRefine, which you can use. I wanted to show you this just to give you a sense of like, well, like this is a human judgment thing here. Like I'm not gonna need to like replace values, but I'm gonna want to take a look at this data and see what it means. So how come, like here's 7Z. Certainly, wouldn't you think that 7-zip would be one of the allowed values? Well, if you look here, it actually is. And it is here in this column. And the reason it didn't match was because our Z is capitalized. And if you look further down here, you're like, wait a minute, there's a PDF that matches here and it doesn't match here. That's because there's an extra space after PDF. So again, if you're looking at this stuff, it is exact string matching. And if you do it this way, you're not going to get the super fun OpenRefine functions that you normally get. But have no fear. Like I said, there is an extension called reconcile-CSV. And if you install this with your OpenRefine, it will give you some of those nice functions back. Okay. Cell cross is a little bit to get your head around. And so I have included in my slides a link to a wonderful blog post by Ruth Tillman, Learning Cell Cross and OpenRefine. So this will sort of explain to you how that process works exactly, if you want to know more. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to pause again for questions.
We don't have anything sitting in the queue right now, but as a reminder, you can go ahead and throw those in the Q&A and we'll get to them in the order that they come in. I'll give people a moment for that.
All right, so nothing there?
Nope, doesn't. Oh, here we go. Nope, we got two coming
Okay.
in. It's magic. You always ask, and then they come in right after that. So the first one we have here asks, is there a way to combine the contains function and cell.cross?
Which function do you mean by contains? Can you clarify?
I'll give that person a second to type that up and clarify that. And then in the meantime, we have another question, which is, can you speak about rows? Oh, we got it. The grel function.
Got it. Yep, I understand that. And so I think most likely, yes. Again, I said that like this was just one type of output that I used, and this is my expression that I used here. I bet you could. So yes, you can like push together as many grel functions as you want at once, or you can split them up if it's easier to think about that way. But yes, I would say that's a very promising route to follow.
All righty, thank you very much. And our other question, can you speak about rows versus columns?
You mean rows versus records or rows versus columns?
The question does say rows versus columns, but if that person wants to correct me, please feel free to put
Yeah,
that in. We can.
let me know.
Yes, rows versus records.
Yeah,
Yes.
gotcha. Okay, so let's start off with records. My data, let's go ahead and clear all of this. We have 3 records here. Some of our records have multiple values within one cell. Okay, so this is an example. We'll go back and you can see that there are a whole bunch of values here. And if you want to do any reconciliation, you have to do a text string. Right now, this text string is all of this stuff, right? That is not going to reconcile. Only the individual pieces will reconcile. So what you want to do is split these multi-valued cells. And now, instead of just having 3 records, we have a total of 16 rows. And that's because we have all these additional values. So hopefully that makes sense to you. All right, if that's it, I will move on to the very last part. All right. So I wanted to mention briefly that when you're doing things like reconciliation, or frankly, anything at scale where you have just a lot of data, you can sometimes find that you have the same value in the same cell. And that's really not what we want, right? Because then we're just maintaining additional metadata with no purpose. So there is a way to get rid of them. It's called blanking down. And rather than go through the whole thing, I'm just going to point you to a really excellent tutorial at Illinois about how to do this. Basically, it's part of the edit cells functionality on that menu. And so if you have like the same value repeated, it will just like wipe out the additional ones. I believe what you have to do is split and then blank and then join again. So I wanted to throw that in because really, like sometimes you're like, what just happened? I reconciled my data and now I have something that I didn't quite expect. So I wanted to mention that to you guys. So again, looking at that Illinois tutorial is really helpful. And then I want to mention a few things that are on the horizon for OpenRefine. Folks have asked from time to time about why they can't set the conditions of the matching. So this is the scoring, okay? And that's something that the lovely people who run OpenRefine have discussed more than once and also fairly recently. So I think it was just a couple of months ago, someone wrote in on the forum and said, well, I would like to say that, you know, I would like to auto match, but I want to have everything over a certain score. So again, getting back to that score, they want to be able to tell OpenRefine at the very beginning of that reconciliation process what their magic number is. And right now it's not possible, but it might be in the future. Another thing that may or may not happen is that, as I said earlier, there's no LC reconciliation service, which is like the biggest bummer in the world. There used to be one run by Christina Harlow, but it is not being maintained any longer as Christina is no longer working in the library world. So if you know any developers who really want a fun project to work on, encourage them to start with Christina Harlow's service and maybe just update it and go from there. That would really be a great thing for the community. And last of all, I wanted to mention that there has been some discussion too about in future versions of OpenRefine having support for much larger data sets. Because right now, again, if I want to reconcile a column against the Getty service, which I have not known to be especially slow in any way, like if I have thousands of records, I'm going to sit there and it's going to run and run. And it could run for half an hour on a single column. And so you have to like go away and come back basically. So there may be some work on this in the future. I think that would be great. So keep an eye out. If you're not on the OpenRefine forum and you're really interested, you should join that because that's where you learn about a lot of these things. So I want to thank you all for your time today. I've left you with some links to the things that we talked about today. One I didn't actually mention is the Getty vocabularies has a very, very in-depth OpenRefine tutorial that you can look at. So I believe it's 80 pages long. So get ready to dig in, but it takes you through a lot of the same content we did today, and it has pictures that you can refer to. So again, thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Helen. We'll take a final round of questions as we run up on time. As a reminder, go ahead and pose into the Q&A module. We do have one to start us off, but that may be the only one we have. And that is someone making a comment that there is an LCNAF service through VIAF.
Oh,
I'm not
nice.
familiar with that, Helen.
Oh, boy. That is really exciting. If someone has a link, please put it in the chat. So I guess, oh, you know what? I guess that means that BIOP is on here. That's brilliant. I did not know about that. I believe the last time I tried to work on this, this was not here. Thank you so much. I am totally going to use that. Any other questions or comments?
We do have a question in the chat, which I'm going to get to right now. Someone was asking about the recording and the resources for the first session. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a link to that and put that in the chat. But if anybody else has any questions in the meantime, that may be our last.
Maybe as people are thinking, I'll just put in a brief plug. We have a series of webinars coming up through DPLA that are looking at assessment. The next one is as early as next Thursday, if you can make it. And I believe Dominic already dropped a link in the chat if you wanted to register for that. That's focusing on open education resources and assessing their quality. And then there's one in July, having to do with the Wikimedia use assessment, and then we'll have one in August that is looking at a toolkit that helps measure use and reuse of digital objects. So be sure to check this out. Thanks.
I did manage to get that link from February session, and that's the little blog post that we made that includes the link to both the recording and to the slides, so make sure to check that out as well. I'm not seeing any other questions, Helen, so I think we're good to go.
All righty. Thanks, everybody.